Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and with me, as always, is Ansgar Odinson.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
And thank you very much for joining us once again here on In Time. This week, I think is going to be an interesting one. This is going to be on sort of bias in journalism and journalist activists, people who are using their platform to, in one way or another, exert influence. They're not necessarily being objective. They are inserting their influence on their audience. And we are a news show, but I don't think either of us goes by the name journalist. I've fit in the category of journalist. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Apparently, I am a journalist. I didn't even know it. But
well, and I think what's important about this show is we're not just talking about somebody reporting on your local news. We're talking about some of the most important reporting to get right, which is, the reporting that directly affects the election of our next president.
And we also we let people know we're more of a punditry program. I mean, we are. We get the news right, and when we talk about the news, we get it right. And then we talk about our opinions of it. We're not shy about that.
No.
But it's clear what's opinion and what's fact. And we work very hard to do that. Now, today we're going to have on a guest, and what's interesting about this is, and we don't endorse any candidates. Everybody here has their own opinions on specific candidates. We're not going to come out and endorse or platform a specific candidate, at least not deliberately. And I do think the only position that we here at In Time could say we would take is we don't support Trump. I think that's what I could go out on a limb and say. We're not for him, but we're not. We try very hard to be neutral.
If you are a Trump supporter, I'm not going to tell you that you're a horrible person, because I have Trump supporters in my family. I have Trump supporters in my close friends, and I know that deep down they really believe that their votes and the things that they are for are going to help the people they care about the most.
Yep. So now we do have. So one thing, our producer is a big fan of one of the candidates. Yeah. Just a bit. Sort of very much in love with this candidate, and because he's
there
our
might
producer,
be this one name that we've heard 60 or 70 times a week. I mean, just.
I think it's more than that. It's more than that. I think you're being generous. He calls up. So, Nick, are we preparing Yang for the next Yang show, Yang? And I really want to Yang, and if you Yang, we can Yang, and wouldn't that Yang? Did you want to talk about something, Dave? I'm not. I think he's.
I was talking about Yang.
Just Yang, yeah. So, don't get me wrong. I think Yang's a great candidate. I think everybody here likes him. But again, it's not one way. That's not what the show is for or about. No. This is going to be our third show that's going to, in some way, significantly feature Yang. We did the UBI, which was really supposed to be about the UBI, but the guests were very Yang.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, instead of just talking about the UBI, it became Yang. And then, of course, we had on Fred the Felon. So but I think we wanted to just sort of plant a flag that, we're not trying to, it's just, this is important. And I'm very glad we're covering it. And that's, yeah.
Like him or hate him, this candidate is making probably some of the most controversial, this is what I want to do in the country, right? Like, at this point, I don't think Medicare for All is the most controversial thing out there when you compare it to things like UBI. You know what I mean? So it's kind of hard when you cover social commentary, when you cover culture, politics, the news, not to cover Yang at this point. You just kind of have to. Except there's some media conglomerates that don't seem to want to.
Well, and that's what we've been following what's been going on here for two reasons. One, it's our jobs, it's what we take seriously. Two, when we tried to drop it and ignore it, we got yanged by Yang and our Yang producer. he hasn't let us drop this, and that's good because we can't. This is serious. Well, this is what's going on here. Strikes me as serious. There are a lot of people who haven't heard of it or have heard of the hashtags, and basically it is this. It appears quite conclusively in my mind that MSNBC has been deliberately excluding Yang from their coverage. If this is an accident, I don't understand how, and it's quite egregious. This isn't so in instances where Yang clearly should be included or have equal time or have just show his face or maybe perhaps get his name right. They seem to have failed, so much so that Fox News is calling them out. How messed up do you have to be that Fox News can successfully call you out? And it's funny because Ansgar has said this before, and I kind of like MSNBC, but I realize it's kind of like dessert. It's chocolate cake. It's filling. It's empty calories. But I never really. People would say they're just as bad as Fox, and in my mind, no, they aren't. They really make it this would seem to undercut that argument. So I would like to welcome our guest, Scott. And Scott, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
It's Scott Santens.
Scott Santens?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Scott, thank you very much for joining us. And I think we want to discuss sort of blackouts in the media in general, but and there have been a lot of candidates who have been pushed one way or another. Ansgar had a few really good ones that I hadn't heard of that he wanted to mention. But let's start with Yang and what has MSNBC been doing in regards to Andrew Yang?
Yeah, so this has been the first instance was like back in March, as far as I know. And what this was is it's really kind of at least centered around graphics on MSNBC. So when they'll show a graphic, they'll just reporting on the polling results. So let's say it's the average polling nationwide, or it's the average in a new poll from Iowa or New Hampshire, or something. And what they do is they'll post the results, and it will be excluding Yang in a way that it's either like, let's say they'll pick the top 5 or something, and then he'll be 6th, or then they'll show like 6 and he'll be 7th, or and then sometimes they'll include someone like who is actually 8th, where he should be there in that spot. So it's one thing where over time it was just kind of like, at first it was like funny, like, oh well, that was a mistake. There's just kind of a weird mistake, and then they do it again, and it's like, okay, now you're made the mistake again. You do it again and again and again, and so it's gone from like at first it was just kind of weird to then it got to like funny, and then like angry, and then like funny again because it was just so absurd. And then now it's angry again because it's just like past that mark of like it's broken the camel's back. But it's just it's crazy. So I put together, I've had a Twitter feed, a thread where I just kept adding to it, and it grew from just like a few to now it's I haven't even counted what the Twitter thread is at now. It's probably like 20 something, pushing 30 at this point. I would think, between like all the examples, not just MSNBC, but CNN is the occasional example, and some others in there for good measure. But MSNBC is just the one that really is
Most
systemically avoiding posting him, and just all sorts of crazy and taking it all together, really purposeful ways, for whatever reason. And it's hard to figure out what that reason is. You can come up with all kinds of conspiracy theories and just in general kind of reasons. Who knows why? But it just seems the fact of the matter is that there is something going on at MSNBC where they really don't want to list his name.
Well, let's start with this interesting one. So this reads, and the graphic is up, this reads 10 candidates on the debate stage. Very dramatic. Now, it's been a while since I've been in 3rd grade. and had to learn to count to 10. I don't see 10 people listed on that graphic.
Yeah, and the funny thing about this graphic too is, so first of all, I consider this to be the most egregious one, I feel, just because like the number is right there. It says 10
Right.
candidates and then there's 9 names. So like,
Well, and there's
you
just
can't
no
possibly have any reason to do that. But so a little bit of a story behind this one is just interesting, is that there was actually another version of this, and so there was an aired version on TV, and there was an online version, and the first version was I believe it was the TV version, and that had the names, and so it was correct. It had Andrew Yang's name there as number 10, and that was correct. And then they had an online version on YouTube, and this is from that. And so this came out afterwards. So that's weird too, where like they had it right, and then they put like then they got it wrong for the online. And this is also that kind of 2 version thing is why it confused. I think it was like one of their producers at MSNBC, where Yang complained about this or pointed it out, and then he was like, "Oh no, you're wrong about that. It has the name." And we're like,
Oh.
"No, you're
So
wrong.
somebody
It
actually just
doesn't."
like denied this gaslighting. Oh my God.
Yeah, so it could be that he did see the other version, and so like in his mind maybe he didn't see the this version that we're looking at, so he was like, "Oh, you're wrong." And then so it could be that he was honestly surprised that this second version existed, and then he apologized, just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry." But how that happened, who's to say? But it's just so weird that the later version that was posted online was missing Yang.
Well, and oh yeah, Ansgar.
I was gonna ask what I want to clarify too before we get too far into the show. Why does it matter whether or not he's on the graphics?
Yeah, it's it's kind of like how a magician works. It's like he's not like actually magically figuring out what your card is. It's just like you do a certain routine of things with the cards, and you narrow down the choices so that what the person that you're working with, as part of the trick, gets the card that you've already effectively selected for them to get, and then they think that they chose the card, and then so that's the magic, is that they think that chose the card, but you actually gave that to them. And that's essentially what these media outlets are doing, is they believe that there's like a certain number of cards you should be looking at, and they're going to try to get a few of those cards in your face more often than the other cards. And then of course some cards they're not even going to put on the deck. They just do not want people looking at those cards at all. And that's Yang is one of those cards that they do not want anyone looking at whatsoever. Well, they're actually even stressing some above others.
I'll say from my background in marketing, I worked in advertising. I was actually one of the people that designed advertisements. You are absolutely correct. If every single time, these splash screens and banners and things like that, they have a profound impact on our psychology. And if and when you are thinking about, like, when your family at dinner says, who do you support, the way your brain works is it recalls familiar images and familiar phrases and things like that. That's how we kind of make a roadmap to our memories. And when a name is left out, especially consistently over so much time, he's kind of left off of that memory roadmap. You know what I mean? When you go to say, "Oh, which candidate do I support?" You're less likely for your brain to find its way to that name because it's been left off of the roadmap. There's actually really, we could talk about it later if we have time. There's an interesting study, for instance, on how your brain actually creates a 3-dimensional roadmap in your mind when reading. and how you recall information from reading. So really fascinating stuff, but we can talk about that later if there's time.
Well, and the other thing, the two things I was thinking of was also his image. Like if his image is excluded, it doesn't reinforce the fact that he's even running and that you can think about him and that you can ask questions and try to learn more about him. So one of the things that happens to me, I haven't really watched regular television in quite some time, but when I used to watch it, and when I used to follow the politics, that show 5 or 6 people that show what they're polling at. And I was actually usually interested in the people at the bottom, not at the top. Everybody knows who's at the top. I was interested in who's at the bottom, who are the long shots, and what are they trying to say. And I'd always look and just see what those names are, and then maybe look them up online, learn a bit more about them. If he's not listed there, and we're visual much more than we are auditory, I wouldn't be listening to what, if the announcer said, here's a list of the 10 candidates, and he reads out a list and includes all 10, I'm not paying attention. I'm looking at the faces and the numbers that match the faces. And if there's only 9, I won't record the missing one.
Mm-hmm. And Yang is an abstract concept in your mind until you solidify it with a face. You know what I mean? He's not really a person.
Yeah.
Well, the good news is it's not like MSNBC really hits his target audience or nothing.
Could you? I don't know if we're gonna do these in order, but I just feel like we should look up these. Can you go to the? It's not on my article, but it's on the Twitter thread, and it's the 3 that he did on the night of the debate. So it's towards the end. I think it's like the 3 last tweets in my Twitter
on
thread.
Your Twitter thread. I don't have your Twitter thread.
Yeah. Okay. So well,
Ansgar or Dave will catch that up. And
so yeah, so what happened there, and this was great because this was with 10 minutes to the debate, and you can even see like the time stamp, so it's got like the countdown, and so they're all excited, and they're kind of like doing their review of stuff, and they're going through the most recent poll results prior to the debate starting. And so they go through national polling and Iowa polling and New Hampshire polling. And each time, Yang isn't listed, but he's the one that should be listed according to the way that they've, set up the thing. So it's like, if it was 6, then he was 7, or if it was 5, he was 6. And so each time you look at that and you look at that and you're thinking, okay, so those are the results. That's who New Hampshire likes most. That's who Iowa likes most. And yeah, so you're thinking from the lack of anyone else, like those are the only candidates that are, that are running or having any kind of impact in those states. But Yang was right there, and he should have been there. So like this is right before the debates, and they are purposefully like avoiding the fact that he is right up there with all these other candidates. And I just thought that was completely crazy too, that they just did it one after the other, and right before this debate aired on their network.
Well, and then he ended up getting, was this the debate where he got, out of 2 hours, he got only 6 minutes? And I think in terms of
the most recent
proportionate
one,
So in terms of the proportionate for his polling versus the time he got like this huge negative ratio. He got the least amount of time of anybody, and he's polling above at least half the people he was on the stage with. He didn't get asked his first question until 30 minutes in. Is that correct? Are both of those correct?
He did not get a question until I believe it was 32 minute mark was when he got his first question. And that was egregious too, because other people had already been called on like multiple times. So it wasn't only like they were putting him last, they went down the line, getting each person, and they went back to previous people. And then they're like, oh yeah, I guess ask Yang a question, and let's have it be like a really stupid question.
Well, stupid questions abound in those, sadly.
We do the coverage of the debates, and in general, we treat that coverage is with the exact deference you would expect, which includes heavy drinking, swearing, and me falling out of my chair and being unable to get up again.
Yeah.
The here's the thing that I think people need to be aware of too. I worked on the Obama campaign, and I remember distinctly when I joined the Obama campaign, he was polling at less than 1% nationwide. He was polling at about 1% in the Democratic Party. That's when I joined, and I remember distinctly he was hovering around fourth. He was very, very slightly ahead of where Yang is now. But for people who sit there and say Yang isn't a credible candidate and he's been a credible candidate. It's close. It wouldn't have been before Obama, but Obama changed how these things work, and he is a credible candidate. Obama was polling at about the same spot until Nevada. Nevada hit. Nobody thought Obama was credible. He won Nevada. Every poll, the best poll he had him in third in Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
He won Nevada. That changed everything. And I remember we had an event at a church. The church could hold 200 people. And we were calling up supporters to say, it's going to be, we've only filled half of the people who want to come. We have to fill it with supporters. So it looks like people are interested. That was the night before. The next day, we had to scrap the entire list because over 2,000 people had signed up in 12 hours to come to that event. Now, Yang is at the cusp of that level. So to say that, for example, that he is not credible or that this isn't important, that's not a tenable position. He is very credibly a candidate for the Democratic Party, and he's been gaining steam, and torpedoing a candidate at that level is very significant, as Obama demonstrated. So now we're still trying to get at least that graphic. And do we have maybe another graphic in order, and we can go on to something else while we?
Yeah, I was going to say too that not only is he credible, but he gets like more polling. Say he does better polling per like media mention. You know, so like people really connect with him in a way that they're not connecting with other candidates. It's like a very strong effect when you look at like how he's doing polling wise compared to his media mentions. And so it's like, just imagine even what the polls would even be saying right now if he was getting the amount of mentions that he should be getting based on even on his polling compared to, you know, those directly around him. So if he was like getting as much coverage as, you know, your Amy Klobuchar and Booker and Harris, you know, then I think that his polling would even be much higher than it is now. Let alone the fact that the polling might necessarily show the way it.
He's clearly been denied media access, and he's doing reasonably well. You have to believe it would have been higher if, and definitely in the credible range. I have to believe it'd be at least at where Obama was at this time when he was first running, if he was being treated seriously. So he had only 6 minutes in the debate, which was, I think, the least amount of time of 10 candidates, which includes candidates who were polling significantly lower than he was. He wasn't asked a question until 30 minutes in. What else has been happening?
Yeah, I guess I would also mention too that looking at just debate times, he has gotten the least amount of debate time for 4 out of the 5 debates. So MSNBC has done 2 debates. This was the second debate for them, and they've done it to them. They've done it to Yang both times now, as far as the fewest questions, least time. CNN was the only one so far, you know, to actually not put him at the bottom as far as the time goes among all the other candidates. So yeah, there's definitely just looking across all the media networks and the debate stage, he's gotten the least amount of time to be in front of the American people.
All right, I think we're still.
Yeah, we're just about got it.
Okay. Hold on one second. So let's see. So what else? Now they've also been and I think we're not. We need to. I'd like to try to move forward at least on the slides if we can, because I think we have a few other slides that are at least queued. He was missing in some images on NBC. Can you describe that?
Sure. Do you want to go to the do one slide at a time?
Yeah, I'd like to. Well, yeah. Let's see if we can get. You know, I know we're looking for specific stuff, but I'd like to try to get the slides moving so we have.
To do that, I gotta go back. Give me a second.
Oh, okay.
I'm in this current screen. I can't change the slides.
Oh, okay. Well, we
Okay.
Okay, here we go. All right. So we've got this one.
Right. So that's that was the first recorded example that I have in the article. It may even not be the first one that was actually out there. You know, maybe there's one. I think I just recently was made aware of like another one from March, but I haven't updated yet with that one. But yeah, this is an early example. We're looking at a list of the candidates from MSNBC, and no Yang. And once again, you'll see, and it's a pretty much a pattern as far as like their choices of like eliminating and then making it obvious that they had room. So like if you look at this, then you can easily see that they could have another person on the lower row and it would be like completely symmetrical. But they decided, you know, not to do that. Although at least in this example, they centered the bottom row instead of like having it shifted over and having like a total empty spot be sitting there.
All right. So in some cases, what's actually happened is it's not symmetrical. It looks like they just dropped somebody. It looks like somebody just came in, took a Photoshop, boom, cut him out, and then just went with the. And then, sorry, I got distracted. There was another. So, oh yes. So he's polling higher than at least three or four of those, and he's not on.
Yeah. Yeah, even at that point, back in March, you know, he was above. Like I think Hickenlooper was like pretty much always at zero, and Delaney has been virtually at zero the whole time too. Yeah, so I'd have to look and see exactly what he was ranked at the time of that particular graphic, but he definitely should be listed there.
All right. So now, what was you had been requesting a graphic about the end of, or the towards the end of the Democratic debates? Is that right? What was the one you had wanted to find?
Yeah. So if you click on, you know, if you're looking at the article and you click on any of the tweets, then it'll bring up the tweet thread, and you can just scroll down to the bottom of the tweet thread, and you'll see that the last. Yeah, the bottom three, whereas the you know the covering of like the big TV board, and with the Okay, so can you hear me okay?
Well, I don't know. I actually don't know. I don't know if all of us got lost. The live chat will probably tell us in a second. We do have. I apologize. We have discovered that our producer works for MSNBC, and so there was some issues there. Hopefully you were able to. I think the stream is still up. I don't know whether they're reporting if the stream is down. Hopefully we'll get some reports from the live chat in a second. It looks to me like it's still
No,
up. Yeah.
no, the stream is up. And
Yeah.
the audio levels on my end said that they were good and they were going through. So if
Yep.
so I'm not sure what could have happened.
Yeah, that's something about the transition seems to have killed the audio. So everyone's seen it. So I think we're going to have to start back from the beginning to when we switched over. People saw it at least. We were having a delightful conversation. Ansgar, I didn't know you felt that way.
So I do want to ask the channel. Did you guys? You said Frozen. Did you guys see what was on the full screen presentation?
Yeah, it was there. I could see
Okay.
it. I was watching. They could see it, and I said it was a static screen, but for
Okay.
whatever reason, it sounds like all of the audio
That's really weird.
wasn't going
We'll have to
through.
get that figured out.
Yep. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just have to cover that from the beginning. So what was it we just looked at?
Okay. So we were looking at there was 3 instances of on the night of the debate, just 10 minutes beforehand, where they were going over various polls. And we were talking about just the first one is the national polling average. And so there's 6 candidates listed, and one of them was Michael Bloomberg, who had not announced yet officially at the time, the night of the debate. He still was not an official candidate. Um, and there's 2 empty spots that they could have to fill out a full 8, and Yang should be in one of those spots. And I would argue that you should, if you're going to have 10 candidates on the debate stage, you might as well actually show everyone where the 10 candidates are as far as their national polling averages. That seems like it would be a good, like, newsworthy thing to do 10 minutes before a debate. But yeah, they didn't do that. They just wanted to show 6, and that 6th person is not even running. So there's just 5 out of the 10 candidates on the debate stage. They showed their national polling averages. So that was the national polling average. The next one that happened that night too is just right afterwards, because this it's all like part of the video. They did the Iowa polling averages, and so they listed 7 people this time, and there's an 8th spot that's missing, and it looks like it's missing. And that 8th spot is where Yang should be there as well. So it has their 7th person is Tom Steyer at 3%, and number 8 should be Andrew Yang at 2.3%. So they didn't list him there. And
All right,
then
so those at a minimum, there's almost plausible deniability because they did have a cutoff, and he was actually below that cutoff. But that cutoff does seem somewhat arbitrary.
yeah, I guess if you want to say that if the cutoff is 3%, then sure. But again, it like in context, it doesn't even make sense, because they're right before a debate with 10 candidates, and it's just all of this should be, showing at least as many of them as can, even if you're pointing out that they have 0% in Iowa. That, I think, is newsworthy right before a debate, because you're interested in how these candidates are like faring in the different states. So I just think that's just in general, to be limiting it to 7 is like weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so the
Well, I'm
next
trying
one,
to give as much charity
yeah,
as possible.
yeah.
I was able to get those pictures up. By the way, they're in the slideshow, so we don't
Very
have to
nice.
Oh,
cut
okay,
to
cool.
yeah.
Well, listen, but no, he likes to take credit for it. It's the hat. The hat is the brains behind the operation. Just FYI.
Okay, so the third one of that night, and again, these were just all right after each other,
Mhm.
and just right before the debate. So the next one is New Hampshire polling average, and again, they've got spots for 8 candidates. They have 7 listed, And once again, Yang is the one missing from that graphic in New Hampshire.
Can I point out something here? Each time they're using the same exact layout, and each time they make the cutoff right above Yang.
Right.
Each time.
Which,
Yeah.
but I mean, there are times when there are coincidences and that kind of thing does happen repeatedly, and it looks like a conspiracy. I really detest. I fight the instinct to go into conspiracy theories. I love conspiracy theories. Everybody loves conspiracy theories. They're very cathartic. It feels great to feel like you know something that nobody else does, and everyone else is a sheeple, and you figured this out. So. You know, sometimes something like this can happen, and I've been doing politics for a very long time, and I've seen it, and I've seen candidates who said all this was deliberate, and it really wasn't. But this is repeated, and this is not just with those numbers. So what else do we have? Oh, we
And
say,
so yeah, I just want to point out too that so these are three that happen right after each other. And so if each of them showed 7 candidates, then you could actually make a good argument that they were just like you're using like a tool of automation, and they're just like feeding in the top 7 numbers into like a graphic template, and that's just the way that it's coming out. Is you know, it looks a little bit weird, but it's 7. So if it was 777, sure, that makes sense. But the first one is 6 with the national polling average. And so that kind of blows that theory out of the water. And that's the drawing of the line where if they had done 7, Yang would be there. And I also want to be fair too that as part of this kind of video summary of stuff, they did show Yang in I think it was one of the slides. I don't remember which state it was for. Like maybe it was for Nevada or something. But they didn't leave him out of every single one of these. But it still is quite odd that they left him out of all these that they did leave him out of.
If you had to guess, I don't know if you counted, but if you had to guess a percentage of graphics that he was left out of, what would you guesstimate?
On NBC, out of like all their graphics that they've ever done, as far as like reporting on the polling results, I don't know, because I'm sure there's ones I haven't seen, and it's not really brought to my attention unless they do leave him out. So it's not like I've got like say a database of like all 100 things that they've done, and then I've gone through and I've counted and I've found that, oh, they've left him out of these. It's like it's brought to my attention when they do leave him out. So I can't say it percentage wise, but it certainly seems like they leave him out like, you know, quite often.
Just two quick things. Somebody had asked about a super chat, and actually, if you can't do a super chat, there's the link. We actually do have a link to super chats that go outside the YouTube system. But the other thing is, somebody had asked about the UBI, and we did a video on the UBI. It's on they had asked questions, and those questions are actually answered in the UBI. So in our UBI, the questions they asked, we've already covered it. Would love to, but if we have a video on the UBI, and we covered it pretty extensively. And we got a super chat. Sweet Heathen, $5, paying for love and affection, but not more than 5. Somebody had said we have a mod policy. Everybody knows what that policy is. We de-wrenched everybody. Everybody got de-wrenched, and then you got to go through our process. We have a web page if you want to get a wrench, all this other stuff. And there's some people showing up going like, what happened to my wrench? It's like, it's not, we have a policy. You can't be a mod unless you've read the policy, you've accepted it's that simple, nothing personal, with the exception of Cheshire Vic. We pulled that one because it's Chesh. That one was personal. I'm just kidding. Just kidding, Chesh. Love you. But all right. So what was I going to say? So so sweet.
I was gonna ask if there were any other candidates that you've seen this sort of thing happen to.
So if you go through the thread, then there are instances where, you know, there's other candidates that have been omitted as well, along with Yang, and you know, those kind of vary. That there's not like anything clear there as far as another one. Um, as far as like someone being admitted as often. But yeah, he's not the only one. But those feel more like mistakes or something actually, or their whatever preferences as far as like uh, say, oh well, let's draw a line here, and then I guess as one example, if you still have my thread up, you can scroll up to the one on November 20th, right before actually the first like Democratic debate slide, and it's Democratic Black voters in South Carolina choice for 2020, and so in this slide, there's six candidates listed, and there's room for 10 based on the way that they've set this up. But there's six candidates, and in doing so, uh, they leave out Yang, they leave out Williamson, and Patrick and Steyer. So like they could have fit all of those in with those, the four blanks that they left out. But for some reason, they decided to just show five, and then Buttigieg, they just wanted to show that he has 0%. And so even from an editorial perspective kind of thing, like they were actually in the context, they were talking about how Pete has like low Black voter support. And so you can see from that perspective why they would want to show him at 0%, and not like other people at 0%. But the fact is that they left out Steyer, who is at 4%, who actually should be above Booker and below Harris. And they also left out Yang, Williamson, and Patrick, who all have 1% in that particular poll. So yeah, that's a good example of them leaving out some other people. And obviously, they're like, hey, look at Pete. Poor Pete. He's at 0%. Pete should have like more than this, but he doesn't.
So
right.
Let me just take a quick turn. Ansgar had brought to my attention an interesting one that I was hoping you could talk about a bit, Ansgar, about candidates that have been getting extra attention significantly. So it's not just that people are getting dropped. And what was the one you had mentioned? Because we spoke
Kamala
at some
Harris
about
has
it.
been getting a lot of attention beyond many other candidates. In fact, in a lot of cases, I know at least on MSNBC, and I believe a couple times on CNN, things like, here was a really interesting one. One of the very first debates, Kamala Harris got really torn into by Tulsi Gabbard. And Tulsi Gabbard became the most Googled candidate that night because everyone wanted to know who the hell is this person that just ripped apart one of the front runners. And well, first of all, Google actually buried results, redirected search results to Kamala Harris, and MSNBC, and I don't remember if CNN did it, but I know MSNBC, the clips that they showed made it, the way they edited it, made it seem as though Kamala Harris got the better of Tulsi when they went to report it. And MSNBC has also been running with the story that, of course, Tulsi is a Trump plant, a Russian operative, and it's been kind of ridiculous. But yeah, they've really been pushing Kamala Harris into the forefront. Now, I don't know if that's like their favorite. I don't know if they really love her or if she's just one of several people, but I've certainly noticed a serious amount of favoritism in Kamala's favor. And I don't know if maybe if they have certain people that they want to push ahead, and that's why Yang is getting this treatment, or if they just have certain people they don't want getting ahead. But there does seem to be a clear objective of some
Yeah,
kind.
I think it's both.
Uh,
And there was some there's an interesting analysis that I saw. I don't know if you have the link to it. I have to find it too. But there was looking at the at trying to figure out like disproportionate representation in like the media, and like the numbers showed that like Pete Buttigieg is like the one getting like exactly what he should be getting based on his polling averages.
So there's one. They've got one.
Like
one.
that's like he's like right there, and then at the very end of this is Yang, and then the second most impacted was Beto, and so you know it would make sense if they were you know wanting to disproportionately cover Beto and he you know wasn't able to last because of it. You know they're like they could have succeeded if that was their goal. They succeeded. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got like you know Amy Klobuchar is getting more coverage you know than she should get based on her polling. Same with Booker, you know, and even Warren is getting more, and so she's like kind of there. See, based on the data, it seems like Warren is like a favorite for
Warren
the
seems to be a
media.
big favorite. Is that what would you say
Yeah.
she's getting the most disproportionate time or and coverage?
Warren was not at the most disproportionate coverage. She is the most of like you know your tier one candidates. You know, if you're looking at Sanders and Biden and Warren, then she's the one out of those getting the disproportionately you know disproportionate coverage. And then you know you've got like your basically like just your senators and stuff. So you know like John Delaney is getting disproportionate coverage, and you know these kinds of the ones that like no one really likes, but for some reason they're getting coverage.
And well, and people have picked up on this. So I yesterday or the day before, the number one tag, it was number 3, I think, when it started. And then it became number 1. The number 1 tag on Twitter was it the MSNBC
Hashtag
fears Yang?
boycott MSNBC. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it sounds like they've actually gotten upset by that, and they're saying, you know, I think they blocked people who had that, if I heard correctly, and then they were responding that you know they didn't think that people should be, you know, there was nothing wrong with it. But this is, people have noticed this is not insignificant. So what's next on the slides if we've got, because this has been going on for a little while here.
Yeah. What was the next slide you want to cover, or do you got set up?
So
I guess we can go back and kind of
set up. We've got
yeah, there's another one where they're just down Yang, and
yeah.
I will say, I think just visually it looks more appealing to have it so that it's staggered and not completely justified. That's actually how the layout on our on In Time is. We have kind of a staggered layout. We don't get everything lined up, and I think it looks a bit more appealing that way. But nonetheless, it's not. First of all, it's not a reason to exclude or drop a name.
Right.
If you were going to drop a name for that
Right.
reason, should drop the last one. And in this case, he was not the last one, so he seems to be dropped. They can't say, "Well, we didn't have room." There clearly is room. So I don't.
Someone
yeah,
has
and
a
like
question.
you know, this is
They
okay.
were asking if this disproportionate is relative to what you subjectively think proportionate should be.
Proportionate being according to the ranked polling, you know, averages is that's kind of the judge of what percentage of media you should be getting.
Right.
You know,
Well,
so if
and
you're getting 5% of the vote, then you should get like 5% of the media.
I'm not sure I necessarily entirely agree with that. And I think there's an argument to be, first, there's an argument to be made. Everybody gets 5 minutes and that's it. That way everybody gets the same amount. You got 5 minutes to make or something to that effect. I don't think that's practical, but I understand the argument. And then there's an argument to be made. Listen, if somebody's polling at the top percentage, they shouldn't necessarily get the top media because everybody knows what they're saying. You have to hear what the, so I understand different arguments to different, but I think in general, when it comes to when you're doing a debate, something to that, first of all, everybody should get roughly the same amount of time, but at a minimum, the coverage should reflect the seriousness of the candidate. And I had seen something. Andrew Yang came up and he said, "Hi, my name is Andrew Yang. If you've been watching television, you know I'm offering everyone $1,000, just for breathing, and that's my policy. That's what it is, and that's all you know about me." And the reason is because the news isn't covering me. They're not covering anything else. He starts talking about all this other history. I was like, whoa, he's a human being. What? He seems a bit like a caricature because we talk about him. We talk about this one policy, but he starts talking about his life experience. And I was just like, I know the life experience of other candidates who are running, and even some who are behind him, but I don't know his because nobody's covered it. And so I think it should be there's no formula. It's difficult, but this is going to link into what we're going to talk about tomorrow. We're talking about journalism, which it's not a black and white, and there has to be some opinion, or not opinion. You have to use your judgment in some cases as to how you're going to respond to things, but it's not always easy to use the judgment correctly, and you can't always tell when it was successful, but you can tell when it's failed. And if you've got a candidate who is a legit candidate who has a shot, he's not somebody who just paid millions of dollars to get his name in and nobody knows who he is, and he lives in a dumpster, whatever, all these others. There are plenty of non-legit, or when I say non-legit, candidates who don't have a credible candidacy. Those don't need to have significant airtime. If you're a credible candidate, you need to be treated that way. And what I see here is he's not being treated as a credible candidate. And that seems to me to be a significant failure. Fred the Felon is in our live chat. Fred, welcome back. We thoroughly enjoyed having the show, and we enjoyed the hangout. And by the way, Scott, you're welcome to have the after show also. Fred was in the after show. People got to talk to him directly. I think everybody enjoyed it. It was probably one of the better after shows we've had. Ansgar, I don't know what you think.
Yeah. If you'd like, after this, we can do an after show.
Yeah, if he's up for it, I'm up for it. But so Fred the Felon, no mercy for NBC, annihilate them, boycott the sponsors. And he had also said earlier, give me Yang or give me death, which seems a bit extreme for a position. I will say our producer is right there with you. But I think to me, that's a little...
I did want to point out, though, that one of the reasons this debating over this and talking about the amount of coverage and how the coverage is done, one of the reasons it matters is, one of the ways we got Trump was because the media could not stop talking about him. Just couldn't. The old adage of, all press is good press, there is something to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, it even goes into, what we were talking about earlier, as far as like the way the mind works and forms memories and associations. And, if you're just seeing the same person over and over and over and over and over again, then, it's firing those neurons in your brain. There's like a familiarity to it. And, it's hard for us to differentiate between like, say one outlet saying something over and over again, like one source saying something like super repeatedly, or like a lot of people saying it like once. So when you have someone like Trump that's just like constantly being discussed, then it's almost like, you just think that he's a major thing, like something that a lot of people are really interested in. And it was just, it's great for ratings. It's great for the media, and they were interested in him. But I think that they definitely helped propel him into the White House. And
that familiarity thing is a big deal because human beings generally are more comfortable with the devil they think they know than change.
Yeah.
And so when Trump has been in your living room for, a year and a fucking half, you feel like the guy. He's comfortable. He's easy to vote for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's some kind of
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is, I don't... first of all, if you are a pundit, if you sit there and say, look, we're going to cover, if Glenn Beck, Bill O'Reilly, both of those are gone now, thank God. But we got guys like that. If they make it clear that, and it's usually pretty clear just by their manner, by how they present themselves, that a lot of what they do is just opinion. That's fine. I don't mind. If you're purportedly a media outlet that is interested in giving the news, you can't filter it like this. And if you decide you're going to, then at a minimum, you tell people, listen, we're excluding certain candidates because we don't like them, or whatever the reason. And I'd like to get into the reason for a second, although I think nobody's been able to answer that. But doing this is underhanded. Doing this is, at least with Glenn Beck, you know where you stand. At least with the other pundits, you know where you stand, and they're at least honest about it. Usually, sometimes they lie and say this is a fact when really it's just opinion. But
I think Alex Jones might be more upfront than MSNBC at this point.
Oh wow, that's a charge. That's a pretty serious charge.
I think that's the reason kind of these polling graphics I think are so effective, and people really connect with just how there's something coming on here, is that when you talk about like opinion and fact, these are just reports on polling. There's nothing to, you can still report the polling and then go into an opinion thing about like, oh, I think that it's great that so and so is ahead, and I think that person at the end is not the candidate for whatever reason. You can apply opinion to the actual like facts, but they're like manipulating the facts. Like if you're going to report on a poll, you got to report on the poll. Like what's the data? And you shouldn't be interfering and like manipulating that. And that's what's so wrong about what they're doing, I think.
Yep. Well, it's what is it? There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. And by dropping statistical numbers and by taking it out of context, you can drastically change what it looks like, and you can turn a candidate to and this is what bugs me the most about this is Yang is on the cusp of that sort of. And no, there are candidates below him that are credible. They're credible candidates, but he is on the cusp of credibly winning. It doesn't sound like it, but he is basically where Obama was, and Obama won. So if you're talking about who has a shot at winning the nomination, you have to include Yang. There's no statistical way to look at this. And again, 10 years ago, that might not have been true. It's true today. He is a long shot, but credibly a shot at getting the nomination. And so dropping him like this is, in my mind, inexcusable.
Well, what pisses me off too is you have these organizations that come in, and people, sadly, a lot of people trust them, and they say that we're a trustworthy source of information and news. And then when they do this, even if we took the most charitable interpretation and this was all some great big accident, that there is just some producer somewhere at MSNBC that he has a blind spot and he literally cannot see Andrew Yang, and
it's like people who are colorblind. There's red, you can't see red, he can't see Yang.
He can't see Yang. So even if we took that charitable interpretation, it is still incredibly manipulative. You know what I mean? It is still, there should be somebody going, hey dude, you're kind of missing somebody. Who? I don't see him. Well, let's hire a new producer who can see Yang.
I've noticed something. So this graphic is it looks like it's the top 20 candidates is what I see here. And Yang would easily be in the top half of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, and they don't even, these aren't even ordered in their like top, right? These are just randomly thrown in there, because look, you've got Biden at the bottom, you've got like Gabbard up at the top, you've got Kamala up at the top. I mean, Bernie.
And they also they have it listed as like these are the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates. Like they're not even saying these are the top 20.
Oh, that's true. That's
like
right.
That.
Yeah, this implies specifically
candidates.
And Fred the Felon, all the other candidates are complete garbage. Thank you for the super chat there, Fred. We did. Well, you know what? We should probably have him back on at some point.
We should.
He was like, that was a
We could
a
always
good
invite
show.
him into the after show.
Yeah, Fred, we're going to do an after show. I think Scott said he could make it. So, Fred, we will give you the link, and we would love to have you in the after show if you want to come in and stop by. All right. So, okay. So, yeah, this is the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates, and he must be actually, because of the way they framed it, they didn't even say the top, so he should be there.
So just think what this does to the viewer's mind. This is cementing these are the people that exist. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's.
And if you and what I would do is here's what I do. Part of this is biased too. I just go through, I look at them, I see who looks interesting, and I say, oh, let me look up these. And I start to just when it's starting, when it's early on. This is how I would do it. I would see who I see, and I would see who's up, and then I just start to look at some of the numbers, see who's polling at some interesting numbers, not credible yet, but interesting, and go forward. And they're not giving anyone the opportunity. It's denied. So, and then
so you'd look at a name. So you look at a chart like this, and then let's say you recognize most of them, but then there's someone up there. You're like, oh, I have no idea who Eric Swalwell is, or Tim Ryan or something, and so I'm going to go look them up. I'm going to Google them because I don't know them and they're running for president, and I should probably learn more. And so if by excluding someone from the list like that, then how are you going to get people to go say, I don't know who that person is, I want to learn more?
Well, and again, the key here is Yang is at the cusp of that. Again, when I started with Obama, he was less than 1% nationwide, about 1% Democratic Party, maybe a little higher. He finally got to that barely credible level. He wins Nevada. That changes everything. Yang has been roughly on track for that same thing. He's just below that mark. But if he's just below that mark, that means any failure to treat him equally is gonna keep him from hitting that credible mark. Does that mean he's gonna make it? No, but it's gonna mean he is on the track that Obama was on, and he made it. So that means he's credible, and that means they're basically taking a candidate who is just at that credible level, just at the level where he's got a shot, and they are kneecapping him. They're taking the long shot, and they are kneecapping the guy for some reason. I would like to get into that. I would want to say, Nate Brody, $5. Got to go to work. Love you all. Great show as always. Nate, thank you very much. Much appreciated. We really enjoyed having you on. I think that was a great show too. So thank you very much for the super chat.
And always good to see you drop by.
Oh, absolutely. Always good. Thank you for hanging out. Sorry you got to bail, but he comes by a lot. So that's marvelous. Why are they doing this? This is the question. They're doing it. This isn't, and we've got more. We're going to cover more, but they are doing this. Why?
Yeah, that's the $1,000 a month question.
I'm dead.
Okay, well, let's get rid of him. He doesn't know why. We need somebody. And now this is. I mean, I'd like to. Nobody's been able to. Did Yang sleep with the wife of somebody on MSNBC? Did he sleep with the husband of somebody on MSNBC? I would like to know why MSNBC, because this is, and there is some manipulation of all the candidates, but this is disproportionate, and it looks like they're trying to hide it because they're not doing it. It's not like every time, but
right.
it's happening.
It's not. There's no such thing as perfect coverage, right?
Yeah.
But this is so blatantly anti-Yang that it's even people who aren't really paying attention are noticing.
Well, people who aren't for Yang are sitting there going, guys, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Well, and the reality is what I think all of us want on both sides of the aisle is fair coverage. That's it. So that we can make an informed decision. MSNBC is denying us that. Period.
Yes.
That's what I see, at least. That's not acceptable in a news organization. If they don't want to be a news organization, that's fine. Join Fox. But
well, the way I like to frame it is like this. Like, some people see things like this, which is kind of like a form of censorship, and they say, "Oh, they're not letting somebody get their message out." That's not the way I see it. they're not letting me, right? They're telling me what I can't see, what I can't hear,
Yeah,
what I
that's a
can't
really
be
good point.
exposed to, and that's what pisses me off.
Well,
Yeah.
Ansgar is a sensitive little flower, and
I
we
am.
can't. We we have to protect him from the mean old socialist. Oh,
I'm very delicate. You've
you're
all
very
seen.
delicate. Yeah, Ansgar's delicate. It's
The only thing that protects me is the hat.
it's your shield. Well, what is it? It's a magic hat of +1. What you were talking that you
Oh,
converted it into a D&D relic.
Yes, it's a plus. Well, it's a sentient weapon. It's a +6 sentient weapon.
Oh well, there you go.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So okay, what do we got next?
I think that's all the slides that Dave
Oh, okay.
Dave sent me a website that had a bunch of slides. He said it had all of his stuff on there. So I saved every single image that was on the website, and we've gone through those. Now on his Twitter timeline, there's a bunch more.
Well, there's a lot more on the website too. And there's even more on the thread, but yeah, there's still more on the website. Like the next one would be the May 17th one.
Because I went to the website,
and I think Kitty and Dave have each dropped. Kitty and Dave have each dropped a link, I think, to the website. But if we could drop at least one more link to the website so people can go see it and they can see what we're talking about, I would appreciate it.
I'll drop the website now. So here's the website. I'm getting a thing where only some of the pictures are loading. If there's supposed to be pictures there, like the vast.
So okay. So if you go to this website, one of the things is he is censoring some of his own image, some of his own. That's
MSNBC has dropped the censorship on the website.
That's pretty meta. MSNBC is running his website. Yes.
So the website is it's a bunch of embedded tweets, and so sometimes it can take longer than other times to load up all the tweets on that website.
Make sure you save those, because if somebody deletes that stuff, and we've had that, and we're gonna be discussing tomorrow. This is part almost a two-parter here. Tomorrow we're going to be discussing journalists and media. We're going to be talking about how activists are, sorry, not just journalists, but bloggers who claim they're journalists and are treated like journalists and do not behave like journalists. And we're going to be talking about a lot of the bias that goes out, the activism that goes out, and that includes tweeting, deleting, subtweeting, sort of aggressive. We're going to be covering a lot, but just this, we have some friends who record these things, and we try to keep records of that. We have our own archives, and I think you save this because people are going to start deleting this as this gets bigger.
Yeah, on the website, there's only 4 actual images. At least the link that I put in chat here, and then the rest of them, they just say things like on May 17th. With the list of candidates now exceeding 20, Andrew Yang is excluded yet again, despite outpolling 7 of the candidates listed, and there's no picture to go with it. So I don't know if pictures have been taken down or what.
Well, yeah, so that's where the tweet is embedded. So you like, I'm looking at the same page, right now, and so the next one would be, it's a tweet from Nerds for Yang with the picture embedded in the tweet.
I'm not getting the embedded tweets on. I've tried 3 different browsers, and I'm not getting the embedded tweets.
They're all there for me too, Ansgar. So it's your fault.
Weird.
But anyways, I guess we could just kind of cover maybe a little bit. Well, the next tweet is really similar to the one we were just looking at with the list of the candidates, except so Tom from Nerds for Yang actually added a little bit of information to it by actually showing which of the faces were lower than Yang in the polls, and so that they're all listed. So you see that of this list of 20 people, with the title of the graphic is 2020 Democratic presidential candidates again. So of that listed 20, then you've got 7 of them listed are below Yang in the polls, and then you've got some even who are shown who are tied with Yang. So it's egregious to even know just how many people are pulling underneath them, that they're making it into these graphics of the contenders.
So I want to make, and I made a joke about this earlier, and I think most people know, you don't have to be too media savvy to know this, but I sort of really do want to explain. As everybody knows, there's sort of left media, there's right media, and it's I get disturbed when people say Fox News is in the middle. Fox News is on the right. There's some sort of middle, but most organizations are on a spectrum left to right. And MSNBC is on the left. That is irrefutable. They are not an unbiased organization. They are on the left. They, for the most part, I have still usually considered been rather trustworthy. You're going to filter it through. It's going to be filtered through the the pro left, but they've been trustworthy, and they've been if I had to watch them or Fox News, it's going to be them without a doubt. But this is, in my mind, a dramatic change. And one of the problems is, if you are a Democrat and you want to become president, you have to win the primary. If you want to win the primary, you have to get your message out. People have to know who you are. And this is the #1 network for communicating to your base, period. This is the network that the liberals are going to be following. So they have tremendous power. And ostensibly, now there's no law saying that they have to be neutral. Actually, I think there's a few laws sort of roughly close to that, but not really. There's no law saying they have to be neutral, but the assumption is that they're going to be. That's how they present themselves. That's what a news organization should be. But here they are applying significant bias to eliminate certain candidates and to elevate others.
Yeah.
And they're doing so surreptitiously without telling people that they are doing it. And again, if Rachel Maddow comes out and says, hey, I love Yang, he's my candidate, let's talk about Yang for 20, that's great. Everybody knows she's a pundit. Everybody knows that, what she does. But if the news organization itself, if she does it surreptitiously, if she sits there and says, well, I love Yang and I'm going to really help him, but I'm not going to tell anyone I'm doing that. I'm not going to tell anyone I've picked one side over the other. That's a problem. And to have the news organization that's not a pundit you see on the screen there. That's the news organization, and they're doing it on the debates, which ostensibly are supposed to be fair. What is Yang's response to this?
Well, yeah. So Yang's response until very recently has been quite friendly, as far as like, hey, kind of jokingly tweeting at them, going, I think I should be on this list. And then, MSNBC coming back and apologizing. And, that's kind of been the back and forth. But then most recently with this, the debate, what happened at the debates, and him being at the bottom again, then it was just kind of the camel that broke the camel's back, or the straw that broke the camel's back. And so Yang's response really was like to switch to, hey, we don't need them, and instead of even going after them, it's like your strategy could be, I demand, this from you. And he has been saying like, look, if you apologize, then I'll apologize on air, then I will go back onto your show.
I don't think that's gonna happen, even if they got it.
Yeah, and so that's what he's been saying. And so at the same time, he's telling everybody else in the Yang gang, like we just don't need them. They think that we need them, and we don't. We're going to get around these gatekeepers ourselves. And it's interesting too. So this was responsible for the Tell the Truth NBC hashtag that we trended yesterday. Was MSNBC claimed that that they had a call with Yang and apologized or whatever, and then Yang is like, that never happened.
Oh Jesus.
So they kind of
now
doubled
MSNBC,
down.
Where did MSNBC make that claim?
That was I believe there's an article that was in Politico, and so if you look up the article, then they'll say they reached out to them, and the representative said that they reached out to Yang, and that was kind of the drama that took place yesterday.
The only reason I take that even more seriously is because so far these have all been essentially they're lying. These are lies of omission. They are representing that he is lower than he is, but lies of omission are still a very different kind of lie than to actively go out and lie. And if this is an official statement by not Fox News, see now they're getting conflated in my head, by MSNBC, that would seem at this point, it could be wrong, maybe there was a miscommunication, maybe, but it's unlikely. I think if Yang says this didn't happen, I would have to believe it didn't happen. So that would mean that MSNBC is now actively lying about the situation. That's a
Yeah.
Even with just one, that's a huge change for a news organization.
And I don't want to again like get into theories of why and stuff, but I do want to go back to let's call it Mike Gate from the first debate when for those who aren't familiar, Yang claimed that his mic was off in the first debate, and that so when he was trying to interject that he couldn't
Oh my God.
because the mic wasn't working. And so that was what he claimed. And Marianne Williamson also backed that and said that she experienced the same issue. So that was like a whole news cycle about like, oh, is Yang, was his mic actually on or off? But I believe that Yang is being honest about that, and Marianne Williamson. And and the response from MSNBC to that was that they insisted that it was on. So it wasn't like they kind of say, oh well, there could have been an issue. We look into it. Let's do like a little investigation to see if maybe it wasn't, and maybe it was accidentally off, and we're sorry for that, kind of thing. Like they could have gone that direction. But it's interesting how like they immediately just said, "Oh, we are 100% sure that he's lying and that the mic was on."
Yeah, and there's almost no way to be sure of that. I mean, I don't know how one would be sure of that unless somebody walked up to him, tried the mic, and there was somebody on the other side verifying. I don't know how you're sure of that. That's staggering to try to make that claim.
Yeah, and I was really surprised that they came out with such a hard claim like that instead of doing the softer thing, like saying, "Well, we're not sure. We should look into it," kind of thing. So when I think of like, we've got all these lies of omission, but then there's occasionally these lies of like MSNBC actually like straight up making up something, and that's not as often, but it's there. And yeah, this most recent one again. Was one of those where they're saying, "Oh yeah, we apologized." What are you talking about?
All right, well let's do this. I've got someone in the live chat. Our producer has said that he believes there's actual footage of Yang speaking. You can see his lips moving. He is talking, but nothing is coming through the mic. So let's see if we can try to get those. I think what we should do now is, unless there's something else we really want to cover, start getting ready. We'll do the after show. People who want to ask you questions can come on in. The after show is usually managed by Kitty and Dave through the Discord. They will drop the link to the Discord server there so that you can get through. If you don't have Discord, you can get Discord. It's free. We use it because it really makes it easier to manage and keep out trolls. I'm hot and sexy, so I get lots of trolls, and people are just sitting there and want to cause. Ansgar gets even more. They just look at him and they're just like, oh, we got to give him a hard time. So it's easiest to manage it through the Discord. Yep. So it's probably going to take about 10 minutes to get the live, get the after show running. If you guys have a question, you want to talk to Scott, you want to come on in or just hang out with Ansgar and you can join us. Again, the links will be dropped shortly, and the after show, it's on the In Time channel. It will be up probably in about 10 or 15 minutes. So unless there's anything else anyone wanted to cover. I will take that as, oh, yes.
I guess I haven't really given my opinion as far as like to why I think they're doing what they're doing.
Yes, I would very much like to know.
And so I I do not like. I think it's possible that there could have been, orders passed down, saying that let's try to avoid doing this. But I still want to avoid, suggesting that, and more saying that I think it's one of those examples where there's just like a certain momentum or status quo kind of normalcy kind of thing, and Yang doesn't fit into that kind of box or those boxes that they traditionally think of as political, presidential candidates. And so, it's absolutely wrong for them to be reporting on polls as they are with leaving them out. But I would think that instead of them, they're not going like, oh, we don't want him to win because we don't want basic income. We don't want him to win because of like his views on like media and property rights, or anything like that. I think it's just them thinking that, this Yang guy, come on, he's not really going to win. He's polling low, and he's not even a senator or a congressman. He's not a politician.
Yeah.
He's never, he's not going to be president. So let's just not bother. I think it's like that seems to be more likely as to be, kind of the reasoning that this could happen over and over again, instead of being some kind of like top down orders kind of thing.
That's an interesting point, and I think there's a good deal of truth to it. Any kind of top down orders kind of thing would probably by this point have heard of it. Somebody would have said, oh yeah, this is the fact that nobody has leaked any reasons for this suggests to me that it's not really a huge conspiracy in any sense. And again, conspiracy theories, but I do think this is more than just, well, he's not a credible candidate, so we're going to drop it. I don't know. It's more than that. I think it sounds like it's a cultural thing.
I was going to say, to me, it feels like there might be just a culture that's slanted against him at the agency, and it's not even necessarily a conscious decision that we're going to fuck over Yang. It's merely just easy to do so because it's a culture that's kind of against him and his politics.
And I think they're too smart over there to make the argument he's not going to win, so we're going to drop him. There are a lot of candidates that aren't going to win on that list that they do not drop. Sure. And they know they're obligated to keep it. It ain't that. It's something else. And I think Ansgar's. I think there is a culture against him specifically. And I want to understand why. And I do think it could be, for example, and this isn't still an argument for that sort of top down, but let's say for some reason a bigwig really bigwig at MSNBC does not like Yang, and he makes that opinion clear. People below him sit there and say, okay, we're not going to really like Yang either, and then it filters down. And so it's not like orders from headquarters, but everybody's reasonably clear that if you really are for Yang, you do that at your own risk. And if Yang's mic might be out and you got 6 other things to worry about, forget Yang's mic. I got bigger fish to fry, kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think Sanders suffered the same, treatment last time around.
Yes.
I think it's very similar. Like whatever reasoning, whatever thinking going on at MSNBC is going on with Yang, I think it's very similar to what happened back there with Sanders, where they're just like, yeah, let's not really report on, Bernie at least as much as Hillary.
And keep in mind, that kind of thinking, I understand the kind of thinking that I'm going to have my views and I'm going to impose them out on others. I think you have to be honest when you're doing that. When you're not doing that, when you don't want to do that, you have the news and you sit there and say, this is it and these are the facts. The thinking that they're doing, that they're going to do that kind of filter and that they're not going to treat everybody equally, I think there is a very good argument for that's why Trump is president, because every poll I've seen says Sanders could have and would have beaten Trump, and Sanders would have beaten Hillary if that hadn't been happening. If that hadn't happened, Sanders would have been the Democratic nominee. If he was the Democratic nominee, he'd have won the presidency. So if you're a left-wing organization, you need to take responsibility for the fact that that behavior is why Trump was elected.
I'd also like to say that in general, there seems to be a culture in the media where they're no
Yeah.
longer trying to inform you, they're trying to tell you what to do. You know what I mean? They're trying to tell you what your opinion should be, and so they feel I've even heard some of them talk about it, that like, because of Trump, oh, now the responsible thing to do is to basically try to manipulate the public into having the opinions they hold.
And that undermines their credibility. It makes it harder when you've got a good candidate who is genuine, because nobody's going to believe you anymore.
Right.
It causes problems where it undermines even your belief in the system. If you believe in the democratic system, then give everybody the most information you can and let them choose. You are deliberately saying, I don't trust the democratic system enough to feel that people are entitled to their own information. They're entitled to what I say so that they vote the way I want them to. And that has backfired.
Yeah, and I just want to say too is, as far as like media culture, the media culture actually really inspired me to start writing about basic income in the first place, because basically I was experiencing the same thing that's going on with Yang, but with basic income. As in, I would read articles, and let's say it's about automation, and it's talking about, oh, we need to do something, and then it wouldn't say anything about basic income. And or if like massive inequality, what do we do about this? Oh, poverty, what do we do about this? And it's just like I just read article after article. I'm like, okay, you have to know about this, and if you don't, then someone has to say something about this, because by not mentioning it, then no one's thinking about it, and so it's not going to happen. So like, I've got to like help connect these dots and say, yeah, these are the problems, and this is one of the solutions to this problem. And so that's where I needed to start getting that out there. And yeah, I think that there's something there as far as like the media, thinking that like your status quo kind of solutions are like the menu to choose among. Like if there's a buffet, it's like, well, obviously we got to do some mix of more college, tax credits, and increasing various welfare programs and some kind of housing. And it's like, these like the normal things that we're already doing, we can do more of that, and then we can tackle these problems instead of like thinking about new solutions to these problems. And I think it kind of fits in there with like Yang is talking about new solutions to these problems, and so then it kind of helps that again, he doesn't fit into their like menu that they want to offer people.
All right. Well, on that, I think that's a great place to end. Thank you very much for joining us. What we're going to do now is we're going to switch over to the so if you want to just hang out where you are, and we'll be again through the Discord. Anyone can come on in and chat with you, chat with Ansgar or myself, and we will so we'll pick this up in about 10 or 15 minutes. That's about how long it'll take to switch over. I think we'll try to optimize that process, but right now that's how long it takes.
Links
Ansgar,
to our Discord are in the description, so if you need those links, just check out the description and give it a click.
They are in our description because Ansgar is all over it. So let's all right, we will see all of you in about 10 minutes. And Fred the Felon, if you're still there, and we'll try to send you a link. I think Dave's got your contact info. I've got it. We'll send you a link. We hope you'll come in too. So you just have to pass the vetting process. But I don't know if we want the likes of you around, but we'll see. All right. Thank you all very much.
See ya.